Trial Tuesday, once again, our legal expert, the Dean of Discovery himself, David Aylor, joins us today. We are talking about a grand jury here in the state. So, counselor, tell us what the grand jury process is.
Well, obviously, you've got three types of grand juries, really. You have grand juries are going to be within county grand juries in the jurisdictions of each circuit here in South Carolina. Then you have state grand juries, which will be across the entire state. And then, of course, federal grand juries. And essentially what their job is to investigate and review alleged facts of situations and then determine whether or not an individual should be held responsible in the sense that they're arrested and indicted for the crime, not that they're found guilty. Of course, this is different than a trial jury.
So let's back up a little bit. The police, say someone does something wrong or is alleged to do something wrong. The police actually investigate this and gather the evidence. That evidence is then turned over to a grand jury to see if prosecution can come forward.
Correct. It was a probable cause standard, essentially. Obviously, things don't go to the grand jury more often than not before people are arrested. They're arrested for whatever facts that are gathered or evidence that they want to be used, and then the grand jury reviews that before the person's indicted.
Okay, and this can really apply to anyone. And as you said, those three levels, of course, we had the case with House Speaker Bobby Harrell. Now, his case is going to a grand jury. Tell us how that process is going to play out.
Well, essentially what happened in that situation is the Attorney General, Alan Wilson, originally was reviewing the case, and that was at the request of some complaints that were made. There's only a few things that the Attorney General here in the state of South Carolina actually reviews within his or her own office. You have the 16 different circuits where the local solicitors, like for instance Scarlett Wilson is the one here in Charleston and Berkeley County, and that's going to be anything dedicated within those two counties. However, you're talking about something more complex like potential corruption or various things like that. That's when it's going to go to the Attorney General. He or she can review it, and at the point that they decide to refer it to the grand jury, as Alan Wilson did, that means now that the grand jury will have the ability to hear it, 18 people. There'll be certain requirements that they'll look at to determine if these certain violations that are alleged, and completely just alleged at this point, have enough information on those to go forward. And then really the key of that is within the state grand juries, you're able to subpoena records. You can have people come and actually compel them to testify. So it's really a fact-finding situation. But I think it's important to understand from a public perspective, this in no way means that the speaker is guilty of any crime or anyone else in front of him. In fact, it's just the way the system works.
Let's talk about these grand juries. Who actually comprises those grand juries? Is that just like a regular jury pool? And especially the case with the speaker, Mr. Harrell, is that a special grand jury from across the state? Is it people here in Charleston County? Is it people up in Columbia?
Well, that's a good question. If you have a local grand jury, like if there's a grand jury here in the Charleston area, it's going to be pulled from the Charleston County and or if you were in Berkeley County. So that's going to be based on the jurisdiction of where essentially that you are and where the crimes allegedly happened. When you have a state grand jury, it's across the entire state because it's the Attorney General. So it doesn't matter if the person was from the upstate, Midlands, or down in Charleston. If it was a state Attorney General who was actually putting it into the state grand jury, it's going to be 18 folks from across the state.
I see. Let's talk about also the voting process. Clearly, when you have a regular jury case, you need to be unanimous for a decision. What about a grand jury?
In the state grand jury, you're looking at 18 people that are going to be serving on the jury, and then at least 12 of them have to decide that this person should be indicted. If the indictment that goes forward, and if they do not take an indictment forward, basically it goes with a no bill. So they have certain violations that they look at. Those are then reviewed based upon the evidence and the testimony that's provided, and then they determine if they believe there's probable cause to indict the person or if they should just no bill it, and it goes nowhere from there.
If that grand jury says there's a no bill, can it be brought to another grand jury again?
It can be directly indicted, but that's a completely different situation. I think what you have here, particularly with Speaker Harrell, is they're going to go through the thorough review, and that's why Alan Wilson sent it to the state grand jury, and then let the citizens determine whether or not they believe that there's a probable cause standard that he actually did commit any kind of errors within his campaign finances or anything else for that matter.
Our living legal library, David Aylor himself, dropping some knowledge. Counselor, thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it. We'll be following that case for you, of course. Stay with us. We got more Low Country Live right now.